The inside story on why Chelsea sacked Graham Potter, their head coach. It's been a roller coaster ride for the London-based football club as the hierarchy knew they had reached a crossroads. With the team's performance stalling and frustration building in the stands, new signings bought at a premium over a frenzied transfer window were struggling. It was clear that the head coach's team selections were erratic and increasingly ineffective. Even his performances in press conferences had become unpredictable. However, the latest defeat brought matters to a head, and there was only one thing to be done. It took the board around 12 hours to agree that change was needed to salvage the season and decide on the highly rated young coach in whom they would place their trust to take this club forward. And thus, Graham Potter, who had made a name for himself after his success at Brighton Hove Albion, was appointed on a 5-year contract. But as they say, things don't always go as planned. It has taken less than 7 months for that decision to unravel. Potter watched his side being beaten at home by Aston Villa, the 11th defeat of his brief tenure. And then, a little over 24 hours later, Potter was fired. As we dig deeper, the internal sources closer to Chelsea Football Club have revealed that relations with Potter were never hostile, but key senior players were increasingly skeptical and felt he was out of his depth. Some even referred to him as Harry or Hogwarts behind his back, while some team selections caused confusion. But the problems didn't stop there. So bloated had Chelsea's first-team squad become that some players had to sit on the floor during team meetings, while others changed for training in the corridor. And some training sessions had to involve a 9v9 game on top of the usual 11v11, such was the size of the squad. Todd Bowley may draw the focus, but Bedad Eghbali is the real power behind the throne at Stamford Bridge, and some considered the presence of the owners, watching firsthand so often from the sidelines at training, to be unnerving, even though Potter had no issue with it. Eyebrows were raised at the head coach's pledge to try and win the Champions League at a recent meeting with supporters, a statement that seemed out of character, and the hierarchy acted when backed up by data. They determined the team was showing no evidence of progress. Potter had insisted earlier this season that he alone was not the problem at Chelsea, and that he had taken on probably the toughest job in football given the state of flux at the club, as well as the reputation of the man he had replaced at the helm. However, even he would concede that he simply did not win enough games to retain his position. Potter's empathetic approach was initially welcomed by the players at Chelsea, but some began to question if he was too nice and not ruthless enough. His eagerness to learn how he was perceived by the squad and the absence of a bad cop to balance out his approach undermined his status. The players found him approachable, but the lack of authority and respect was evident from the outset, especially among the group who had won the Champions League. Potter's insistence on trusting the process and his public utterances after each performance made the players feel like he was floundering, lacking the charisma and clout of previous managers. The misgivings among the players were bubbling to the surface, with some questioning whether he was out of his depth. Some players saw Potter as a yes man who was simply doing the owner's bidding and complying with everything they asked for, including transfer strategy and team selection. This fueled the sense that he was trying to become something he was not and had never been comfortable in the Chelsea spotlight, even in his interactions with the supporters. The rumor that he was simply following orders from above was circulating within the squad, and it was unhealthy and damaging to team morale. Chelsea spent over £500 million on players, which left the squad unwieldy and frustrated. The club's desire to rejuvenate the team with expensive signings resulted in an overcrowded squad, with players vying for limited game time and attention from the manager, Graham Potter. The squad size fluctuated between 33 and 40 players, with many brought in mid-season, and all of them considered themselves worthy of first-team involvement. However, accommodating such a large group at the team's Cobham training center proved challenging, with some players changing into their kit in the corridor outside the locker room due to insufficient space. Team meetings were so cluttered that some players had to sit on the floor. The bloated nature of the squad also spilled out onto the training ground, where it was impossible for the manager to offer proper one-on-one time to improve individuals. As a result, players were anxious about their prospects of breaking into the senior lineup, and even youngsters promised a pathway found themselves slipping down the pecking order. How much did it cost Chelsea to hire and sack Graham Potter? Chelsea paid £21.5 million in compensation to Brighton and Hove Albion to bring Potter and his coaching staff to Stamford Bridge. Potter received a yearly income of £11.8 million, making him the third highest paid manager in the Premier League behind Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp, and the fourth highest paid manager in world football prior to his dismissal. Therefore, the total cost of Potter's entire contract was a staggering £59 million. It is not clear what kind of compensation package he will receive after being sacked 6 months into the job, but he is reported to receive regular severance unrelated to the remaining duration of 5-year contract. So what's next for Chelsea? The decision to sack sack Potter after just 6 months, and the failure to secure Mauricio Pochettino's interest means Chelsea's football club ownership is determined to conduct proper due diligence over a successor. Julian Nagelsmann, who was recently sacked by Bayern Munich, is likely to be a leading candidate. However, the process will take weeks rather than hours to conclude, and the club will conduct interviews with a number of candidates, some of whom are free agents, while others are contracted elsewhere. And the assumption is that all the coaching staff will remain at Stamford Bridge until at least the summer.